Hey, this is Justin. Just real quick, I want to jump in before we get started officially on this. This week's episode with Robin R. is a fantastic one, but there were some recording issues. So there are some skipping, a little bit of robotic sound throughout the recording. Overall, the message is fantastic. Please don't let the sound quality and the skipping affect your willingness to stick around and listen, because the message is well worth it. Don't give up before the miracle happens. Here we go. My name is Justin, and I'm a son of God and an addict, and the host of the RICO 12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, October 1 day to June 19th, 2015. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Welcome to RICO 12. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust, just to name a few. We come together from all addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. Invite recovering with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope on a live Zoom webinar. And this time it's recorded, but typically it's each Friday at noon Central Time for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. If you are hearing this meeting in recorded podcast form, which you are, and would like to participate as a live audience member in the future, please go to RICO12.com. That's RECO12.com to learn more and submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations. RICO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the cost of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. To contribute, you can go to RICO12.com/support, or you can click the link to the PayPal in the show notes of this meeting. When you contribute, please specify the meeting number. This is meeting number 63. We pre-recorded this meeting on August 7th, as my son is getting married the weekend of the 20th, and I'm real excited about that, but I will be unable to host a live meeting on that date. The summer is starting to wind down, and gratefully there will be fewer and fewer of these pre-recorded meetings, and we'll get back to them being live each Friday at noon Central Time. One more word about our speakers before we introduce today's speaker. When we line up a speaker for a meeting, we ask them to seek guidance on what and how to, so that they can reflect the light that they have been given. That light will inspire hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now for today's guest speaker, Robin R., whose topic will be perseverance. Here's a little bit about Robin in her own words. I started my recovery on August 7th, 1995. Happy birthday. That's so awesome. With complete abstinence from all drugs, it is through perseverance that I keep trying to use every recovery tool God hands me to find abstinence from trigger food, sex, spending, codependence, and a variety of other compulsive behaviors. NA is my home, yet I have found amazing freedom recently with SLAA, CODA, two-way prayer, and working the steps from the 12-step program, Big Book Guide. I am honored, blessed, and grateful to share my experience of perseverance in 12-step recovery. Robin, once again, happy birthday. It's awesome that I get to talk to you on your birthday and hear from you. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be of service. And thank you for your service. So perseverance. I looked up the definition this morning because I was like, do I even know what perseverance is? I don't even know if I can speak on this topic. Like I had I have a lot of those little mini crises, in my head. And, it's like working toward a goal despite difficulty, perseverance, and gosh, and that was right along the lines that I was thinking. I was like, well, I can't really share about perseverance without sharing about the difficulties I've had in the 26 years that I've been working a 12-step program. And gosh, perseverance is wonderful, and for me, perseverance is a lot about the 10th and 11th step, daily inventory, continuing, our 12 step, we practice these principles in all our affairs. And so perseverance has kept me going, and NA is my home group. home fellowship, I guess you'd call it. I started there. Well, I started with AA and OA, and probably 3 years into my recovery, I made NA, my fellowship of primary attendance, and gosh, in their literature, they talk about in recovery and relapse that if we don't persist, we are sure to relapse. We might tire of our new activities and our new ideas, but if we don't continue them, we don't continue in recovery, right? And for me, perseverance is constantly in a very prayerful and meditative way throughout my whole day, like trying to recenter on that idea. Am I feeding my recovery, or am I feeding my addiction, my obsession, my compulsion, my self-centeredness? What is this thought? Where is this thought taking me? Is it taking me toward recovery, or is it taking me away? Yeah, because today is like that's the daily struggle is keeping my thoughts toward recovery. And two-way prayer has been a godsend. And part of my persistence is that in my recovery, I came into 12-step angry at God. And now, through, showing up to meetings and hearing people and how they, practice prayer meditation, trying a new prayer, trying a new way of meditating, like trying something different, trying a new religion, trying something different, trying something old in a different way. And so recently having discovered two-way prayer has been like an answer to sometimes my prayer of just like, show me, show me your will somehow, some way. I don't get it, and it's been really beautiful. It's been really beautiful. I'm so grateful that this program has taught me to keep trying, Robin. If you don't want to try because you're just too tired, pray for willingness to keep trying. For me, that's persistence. That's been persistence to keep trying. So I got clean August 7th, 1995. Had no idea that the last time I got high was going to be the last time I got high. And that was like day one persistence. I had used, and I went to go find someone to use more with, and I don't know what in me kept me walking, but I just kept walking. And I didn't get high again. And I just persistently put one foot in front of the other. Part of my bottom was I had used a lot as a nanny, like taking care of people's children. And when I was walking, I saw, dude, who I was going to buy from, or I'll get some, trade some. And I saw kids playing jump rope on the sidewalk in front of his house. And there was just enough in me to keep walking because I thought, I don't want to be that person again who uses while she watches people's kids and drives them in her car. Like, I don't want to be that. I knew without any confusion that drugs had the power to change me into someone I didn't like. And so I kept walking, just persistently, one foot in front of the other, took myself back to my house. And I have not gotten high for the last 26 years. That was it. And my early recovery was a lot of torturous obsession to use, wanting to use, just reading one more paragraph, just going to one more meeting, just making one more phone call before I use, and I surrounded myself with people who wanted to stay clean more than I did, and I did not get high. I did not get high. I worked the steps. I did service work, and I met someone in the fellowship. I met someone in my recovery home that I was staying in, and I married him. And relationships are probably my primary area for obsession, compulsion, and self-centeredness. I had a very traumatic childhood, and at a very young age, used relationships as a way to seek safety and validation and approval, and in some really, really, really unhealthy ways and dangerous ways. And so relationships have always been really messy. So I married someone out of that recovery home, and we moved out of the recovery home into our apartments, and we were both working the 12-step program. And then there came a day that we were only probably together for about 4 months, married and together for about 4 months. We married after like knowing each other for 6 months. So I quickly jumped into that relationship. And I was upset. I was very upset. I was sitting in my car and I was crying. I was like, he can't meet all my needs. And there was a thought in my head that was like, you thought he could? And I was like, I guess I did, because I'm really upset because he can't meet my needs. And there was just that awareness, like he was not able, and I was like, what do I do? And I just remember, go to a meeting, call your sponsor. So I persistently have gone to a meeting and called my sponsor when the pain comes and the emotions get high, persistently. Those are two things. Like, sharing for me has always been hard individually. It's easier for me to like go into a meeting and spill my guts and then walk away from the table without any real intimacy with another person. Like that one-on-one, like I talk, they listen, they talk, I listen, they give feedback. That whole process terrifies me. So meetings have always been a foundational piece, and it's kept me clean, and it's kept me working the steps, and it's kept me doing service. It's kept me in contact with my sponsor. And so that was that experience that I stayed clean. I didn't get high, even though the man could not meet all my needs. Kind of high expectation to think he could. So we stayed married. We had kids. I didn't have the desire to use lifted for me until I was pregnant with my first child. And that was probably about 3 years into my recovery. And I remember sitting in a meeting and hearing someone share about the obsession to use, and like, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about it. How long's it been? Oh my gosh, I think it's been like a week. I haven't even thought about getting high. And I was so grateful. And I reached out to that newcomer and I just thanked her for sharing, and I encouraged her, like, man, I thought it would never leave. I thought that obsession would never leave. And it has. Just don't get high. Keep going to meetings, keep sharing, so, persistently sharing that simple message. Man, it gets better. Just don't do it. Pray, go to meetings, share, work these steps. Like it gets better. So I went about my recovery and had another child, and when she was about 3 years old, my husband started using again. And I stayed. He used. I stayed. And then came the day then came the day. I had probably about 17 years clean, and he was using, and he had his stuff in the garage, and I walked by the garage. His workbench had all his stuff laid out, and I walked by and I was like, go in and telling me, like, we got kids in the house, you got to clean that shit up. We can't have this going on. And it was 4 days. And the fourth day, I was like, I'm just going to get high. And I swept all of his stuff into my hand, and I went into the bathroom and I flushed it. And then I went to my kitchen. And I called my sponsee sister. And I was crying and I was upset. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so close. How did I get here? And she very lovingly said, we didn't think you'd make it this long, Robin. We can't live with people getting high and stay clean. And I just cried. I was like, it's so basic. If I want to live a certain life, I have to surround myself with people who are living that same life. And so I did. I let him know, you can keep getting high or you can stay married to me. He chose option C, which was hide it better. And we went along for another 5 years. And until I was willing to get a divorce. And so persistently, I didn't get high. And I don't even know. And I remember, and they talk about there's a power greater than ourselves that will do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Like, I can't even remember, like, consciously deciding that I wasn't going to get high. I just remember thinking I'm going to get high. But I didn't. I flushed it. I went to the kitchen. I called someone. I reached out. This program is about we stay clean. And a lot of times in my recovery, and it was probably to that point, to that exact moment, that I had not stayed clean for me. I stayed clean for him. I stayed clean for my kids. I stayed clean for my sponsor. I stayed clean for my sponsees. I stayed clean for the service work. I stayed clean for the message of recovery to be strong, but it was never like, don't use just because it's going to hurt myself. Because I really lacked self-love, self-care. So that moment when I flushed it was my first conscious decision. And I remember now telling the story. I just don't want to hurt myself this way. Flush. And so the divorce happened. And in that process, he threatened to kill himself. And if I did the divorce, that he would be homeless, that he would hurt me, that he would hurt the kids. There was a lot of threats that went on. And I just remember doing yoga, right? Persistently seeking through prayer, meditation, like I just got back with the God of our understanding, and doing yoga and having a peace come over me of, no matter what he does, you are going to be okay, Robin. Your kids are going to be okay. And this is the most loving thing for him, for you, and for them. It's time for a divorce. And staying clean, seeking through prayer meditation to improve my conscious contact with God persistently. Despite my fears, I can have so much fear. It paralyzes me, and I stay in bad situations way too long because I'm afraid to let go of what I have for what I think I might get. No. It's taken a long time for my faith to grow to a place that I'm able to say yes today. Yes, I have faith. Other stories of persistence. I most recently, the last 4 years of my recovery, have had many challenges with my mental health. I've So the most recently, probably about 4 years ago, hospitalized for, because I really got to that dark place again in my head, right? And I only thought my two choices were to kill myself or get high. And thank God enough recovery was there that option C presented itself, which was go to the hospital, Robin. Go to the hospital. Those are not your only two choices. And I went to meetings through that time, and I shared with my sponsor, and I had counselors that I was working with, and I had psychiatrists I was working with, and I had enough recovery to be able to have one-on-one conversations about what I really thought in my head and how overpowering those thoughts could become. So I went into the hospital, and I went into the hospital again about a month after that. And I lost my house. I went on FMLA, went through a foreclosure, and continued to practice the 12 steps and continued to talk with my sponsor. Thank God for the loving sponsor I had at that time. She just loved me through it. She had no clue about mental health issues, but she just encouraged me, one breath at a time, one choice at a time, one prayer at a time. Pray again. Persistently pray. Even if you don't even think it's working, persistently go to meetings. Even if you don't think they're working, persistently, Robin. Talk to your sponsor, even though your head tells you that she's sick of hearing from you. Persistently reach out and share your story. It never ceases to amaze me that I am asked to give leads when I feel the weakest, when my recovery feels the shakiest, when my mess feels the hugest. All of a sudden, hey, would you like to share? And I say yes. I say yes, despite that voice in my head that tells me I have nothing to share. I'm a mess. It's not working, Robin. Why do you keep trying? I try because I'm persistent in my recovery. I'm persistent. And even as we record this yesterday, I got news from, a recommendation. It was a recommendation from my healthcare provider that she recommends electroconvulsive therapy. I'm terrified. But then I think about, I can have really, really dark moments, and they come fast, and they thank God leave fast, right? Because I would have been back in the hospital Friday night if it had stayed any longer. But it was one of those really terrifying moments, and I persistently will pray about that. I will pray. It starts with making an appointment. I made the appointment to the doctor. Persistently seeking outside help, because I do. I mean, persistence is so important to me. Perseverance is so important to me because I've had decades so depressed, so the voice in my head so loud. This isn't working. This is not working, Robin. Why do you keep trying? Just get high. Just give up. That voice gets so loud in my head. You've tried this for 26 years. You've tried this program. You've tried that program. You've tried the steps this way. You've tried the steps that way. You've tried prayer this way. You've tried prayer that way. You've done service work here. You've done service work there. Nothing works. That's what the negative disease voice tells me. But that's not true. I have some really dark moments, but I have some really joyous, serene, moments as well. And God does carry his message through my mess. I get so anxious about me having to have that message figured out before I open my mouth. But the miracle of recovery is that when I open my mouth, God speaks his message. If I try to figure out my message, it gets all twisted up, sounds fake. It doesn't work. And I won't speak because of that desire that I have to have it all figured out before I can share. No, Robin, just share. This program works. These 12 steps work. You know, you have dark moments. You have light moments too. Keep trying. Keep seeking my will. Keep praying. You know, there's areas of my life that I am not surrendering in. You know, food is probably my primary addiction. And I struggle with that on a daily basis, prayerfully eating and then being like, maybe just a little bit, you know, just a little bit will be okay, you know, and then doing it and having the consequences and my mood fluctuates tremendously with nicotine and sugar and caffeine. And those are probably the three substances I struggle with most on a daily basis right now. Nicotine, caffeine, and sugar, you know, and all I know to do is keep trying, Robin. I love 12-step because no matter where I'm at in my recovery, I can go to NA and I can be so grounded in the victory of 12-step, that celebration of 26 years without getting high. And then I can go to SLAA and I can be the newcomer that I am because relationships are a mess. Not that I would go to OA because I'm an OA dropout. I'm still licking my wounds from the failure of that I had in that fellowship. But I could go to an OA meeting and be a newcomer and have the generosity of people who have had success and relief from the food obsession just share with me their stories of victory, right? And that's the beauty of recovery. And I can feel the energy swell inside me. Like I can keep trying. It worked for them. Maybe it'll work for me, you know, and just to keep trying, you know, we encourage each other. Ideally, we encourage each other. We refrain from judgment and moralization, you know, speaking from some spiritual mountaintop, you know, and we keep coming back. We persevere through all the difficulties that life gives us. And I only mention my difficulties. There were difficulties of people around me in these last 26 years that, you know, I persisted through. It wasn't my problem, but I took it personal, right? And my dad dying, you know, that was a huge faith crisis, you know. But and just seeing how that affected the people around me too, like, yeah, I need this program. I need to persistently practice these principles in all my affairs. I need the 10th step. I need the 11th step. I need the 12th step on a daily. It's house cleaning. It's house cleaning. Well, I need to do the work if I want the rewards. So I don't know. How am I doing on time?
I think if you're good, we can move into the Q&A portion at this point, unless you have something you want to wrap up with here.
No, I'm good.
Awesome. So Robin, now those who are listening in this podcast format can't see this, but Robin has a smile continually as she is speaking. And that smile is infectious and And you shared, Robin, you shared some pretty real, painful things and continued to smile through it, you know? And I want to, first of all, commend you on that and make sure that the listening audience is aware of that, because I think it's important to know. Now, we're going to jump into the Q&A here, but I want to preface a couple of things with this, because this is going to be kind of an interview between just you and me here. But I think there's some important things that need to come out here. You have well over 2 decades of sobriety from your primary killing addiction. That is awesome. But your walk in recovery has not been a cakewalk. And yet you sit here across from me in this Zoom platform with that smile. And it's awesome. I am so grateful to do that. I'm one of the first questions I want to ask you, Robin, is that you mentioned that when, and I'm going to jump to a portion of this, and I'll backtrack if you go back and forth. But you mentioned that when it finally came time to where you felt that it was the right thing and necessary to divorce your husband, that he threatened with self-harm, with harm of you and the kids and everything else. So that's really scary. How did you handle that fear? I mean, you talked about doing yoga, but there's there's so much more to that. How do you handle that when, whether it's a spouse, a family member, a sponsee, or something like that, all of a sudden starts threatening those types of things? How do you deal with that?
How do I deal with that? How do I deal with that? Prayer has been huge. And I've seeked out so many different religions that my concept of the God of my understanding is bigger than it's ever been in my life. At that time of the divorce, I was practicing a very specific religion, and I was immersed in the books, the literature, the music, surrounded myself with it. My mind, the different organizations, participating in them. For me, that's been a huge part. This program talks to us about the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And if we don't enlarge our spiritual growth, we fail, right? We don't fail. We can keep trying, but we become prey to our thoughts, to acting out when our spiritual condition is not maintained. And at that time, I remember just the simple phrase, like, if you have a big problem, you just need a bigger God. And that's the biggest factor. I was in counseling, talking to people, talking to my sponsor, talking to people in the program through that whole process. I'll never forget. I shared I was so upset in this meeting. I was so upset. And after the meeting, this old timer comes up, and he gives me a hug. And he's like this gruff, hard man. And he gives me a hug, and he's like, "You want to kill himself? Just leave the rope on the couch, honey." And I just laughed. I was like, "I love you," because it was that admittance of powerlessness. If that's really what he wants to do, I have no power over it. Let it go, Robin. The way he just so cut and dry and simply and just factually, he just threw that statement out there. It worked. I don't know if he was trying to distract me from my overwhelmed sadness, but I just don't take myself so seriously. Don't live my life that my worst nightmare is the future, right? Like I could see the future. And that's my worst nightmare. Like I have to stay grounded in the present moment and really not take my emotions so seriously, don't take my thoughts so seriously, turn it over to God, seek God's will, help someone else.
Awesome. Robin, was that was so helpful. I really appreciate it. And I want to stay, if you're okay, I kind of want to stay initially in some of the hard times because I think that your perseverance through those hard times can really help a lot of people who are thinking similar things like your inner, what did you call it? Your negative disease voice. What's the point? Why even keep trying? Those voices are so loud in so many people's heads because there aren't pink clouds and unicorns and all that kind of stuff in so many people's experiences. And they think, well, I'm sober, I'm working my recovery, life should be easy. Well, sometimes it's not. So your results, Robin, often seem to be worst case scenarios in some people's minds. How do you see the light when you lose your house, you're hospitalized, you lose a marriage, etc.? How do you see the light and maintain your hope in those situations?
Oh gosh. Well, in those situations, I try to see God's light because for me, part of the fantasy is that if I was just good enough, smart enough, said the right thing, did the right thing, if I could just figure out what the right thing was and do it, everything would be all better. Right. And obviously, I'm incapable of doing that because things are not better. And so it's my fault too. It's my fault. So it's just this huge balloon of self-centeredness of never going to be good enough, never going to be good enough. Like nothing you do is right. Everything you do is wrong. Everything is your fault. For me, that is the overwhelming piece that only God can solve. Only, good, orderly direction, gift of desperation. Those are acronyms for the word God. And when I first came to this fellowship, if there's anyone listening who resents that word alone, like I'm with you because in my books I used to put dots between God just so I wouldn't have to think about the God that I resented, so to speak, and to start there when I first got clean and to be where I am now in my faith. And that's the requirement that this program presents us, that we have to keep growing no matter how much we've grown. Because my negative disease voice will tell me that was so long ago. You could have a little. You could do just one. You've changed so much. You've grown so much. You can get high again. That happened just last Monday. And I didn't stay there. I didn't allow my thoughts to stay there. Right? Because there's a line in I think the very beginning of the book that there are those of us who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do have the capacity to recover if they're honest. Right? And to get to the place, whether it's a struggle I'm in, whether it's an overwhelming thought that I'm having, that's my recent prayer. And there's been a couple prayers in my life that I've found just so powerful, like one-liners, God, bring me people to help me. Bump, bump, people showing up all over the place. And this one, God, help me be honest. God, remove the shroud of denial. And when I prayed that on Monday, when I had the desire to get high, I just remember thinking, well, maybe it'll be fine, but maybe it'll be jails, institutions, and death. are you willing, Robin, to play that game? Are you willing to make that gamble? Are you willing to take that chance at maybe? You know what recovery offers you. Stay in recovery, Robin. And I came to the conclusion I was not willing. I was not willing to maybe have it work or maybe go to jail. I wasn't willing, and that's one of my prayers recently, because I get sick of myself praying for willingness, is thanking God for my unwillingness. Thank you, God, that I am unwilling to put that drug in my body. Thank you, God, for making me unwilling to make that phone call to that guy that beat your ass. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for my unwillingness. So it's all about God, seeking God, seeking God, seeking God, thanking God.
Thank you so much, Robin, for sharing that. That unwillingness. Thank you, God, for my unwillingness to do that. I think that's a really, really powerful thing. I want to ask one more question about the negative disease voice, and then I'm going to move into some other things that I've written down as far as questions. What solution does the negative disease voice expect in order for that negative disease voice, to shut up and get out of your life? I mean, does that voice expect absolute perfection and everything happening? Is that the solution that voice says is sufficient for it to get out of your life? What do you think about that?
For me, the negative disease voice wants me dead, and it wants me high, or at least numb, out of the reach of a conscious contact with God, right? Because that's what happens when I act out compulsively, when I act on that, the thoughts, the voice, when I listen, when I even stay there. I just remember obsessing about getting high so much that I had to use to make that thought stop. It was like I had to act out, right? That's where I couldn't, it was like, because the obsession was so torturous, that the action was the only relief, right? And I can be obsessed with time. I can be obsessed with getting high. I can be obsessed with food. I can be obsessed with the guy. I can be obsessed with work. I can be obsessed with exercise. I can be obsessed with supplements and nutrition. I can be money, spending, gambling, like shoes, one more pair of shoes. I mean, that obsession, right? And as soon as I act on it, the voice will stop. But the problem is that I sever my conscious contact with God, because I'm now running. I'm acting on self-will. I'm acting on self-will. A lot of times making the voice stop in the other direction, right? You asked if perfection, right, would shut it up. What would shut it up? Well, killing myself, acting out on my addictions. That makes it stop for a moment, right? But prayer and meditation is how I best stop that voice and shut it up. Really listen to someone else. This experience of online meetings has given me the opportunity that I can, on a rough day, I can stay in a meeting 24/7 and just practice turning my thoughts. Like the whole time, like my thoughts, that obsession starts creeping up again. And then I have to listen to what the person is saying. That's one of the beneficial things of two-way prayer, is like being able to listen for the voice of God and someone else. Everything anyone has to share is opportunity for the God of my understanding to talk to me, but I have to listen. So prayer and meditation is something that makes that voice stop as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Robin. You mentioned two-way prayer a couple times. I and my wife always gives me a hard time. Anytime somebody mentions two-way prayer, you're all over it because I love two-way prayer. It has been a game changer for me over the last almost coming up on 2 years here. How were you introduced to two-way prayer? How do you practice it, and how does it help you?
So I was introduced to two-way prayer through the WhatsApp groups. I heard about it in the WhatsApp groups I'm a part of, or the CODA WhatsApp group, and then I joined the two-way prayer WhatsApp group, and I had heard speakers speak about two-way prayer, and that was probably my very first. I remember the very first time I heard someone talk about two-way prayer. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have got to try that. And then the disease was right on it. They're just like, you've prayed so many different ways. What makes you think this is going to be any different, Robin? Do you know what I mean? And I waited. It was probably about 2 or 3 months of seeing two-way prayer, hearing people share about two-way prayer before I actually tried it. And then when I did, I was blown away. And I do two-way prayer on my own. I do it through the meetings. I do a one-on-one with another fellow. And the very first piece that really gripped me was that my thoughts can go so quickly that writing them down slows them down. You know what I mean? And that process of just writing slowed down my thoughts enough, right? Which is like a way of silencing that obsessive compulsive disease voice in my head, is like, just slow the thoughts down. So writing them, reading them to someone else, reading them to myself, like, oh my gosh, it's just, it's such a powerful exercise, because the focus of writing, right? Because when I just pray, it's really thoughts against thoughts. But when I put the action of writing in there, like writing the prayer down, like that has such power, like recording the thoughts, like being able to see that my thoughts are so repetitive. And sometimes the voice of God is so repetitive. It's so repetitive and it's so simple. I think it's this overwhelming thing, but really I'm just repeating the same simple thing over and over and over again. But the beauty is that God works the same way, that as I've done two-way prayer, like I can go back and read them. And there it is again. Breathe, Robin, breathe. How many times has that been coming through my relax, rest, love, care, patience, surrender. These are themes that keep being repeated in those two-way prayers. And that's been part of my spiritual awakening along the years, is when one or more sources have this exact same message, it's like that's the voice of the God of my understanding. And when one or more two-way prayers have the exact same message on different days at different times when I was feeling different things, but the message is the same, now that has my attention. Now that strengthens my faith, that is a truth. Because that's part of my disease too. I question everything. So the repetitive quality really, really is powerful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Robin. Sometimes for me, when whether in two-way prayer or whether in whatever, when I hear the same message over and over again, I start getting discouraged that why am I hearing this again? But I think it's vital to get the message across that way, just like you said, repetitively, to help me remember. And I think that's a pretty strong word. Remember what is most important so that I can act on it. Thank you for sharing your experience with prayer. I love it. So the topic of this is persistence. A lot of people, myself included, when you told me this topic, I was like, that sounds a lot like willpower, a lot like my own muscling through things. I don't think that's what it is. Can you please share for me and for others who may hear that as my own willpower muscling through things? What what is the difference there? Is there a difference?
Wow, wow. Yeah, I can see that perspective. Persistence, perseverance could have that quality, right? Because it talks about a goal, right? And when we make a goal and we set our mind to a goal and we work toward a goal, we want the goal to happen, right? But the beauty of perseverance for me and being persistent in my recovery has been that the end goal is God's will. Like when the goal is God's will, that's where the beauty of perseverance comes in, because our expectations, right, get so attached to our goals. We want our day to go a certain way. We want the conversation to go a certain way. We want the job to go a certain way. And we push. I push. I can push to make it go the way that I think it's going to go. But the beauty is that when the goal is God's will, and that's hard for me. I'm like, I need details, right? I want to know exactly what I'm supposed to do. But when the goal is God's will, I now have open mindedness. I now have my motivations are set straight because when I have specific goals in mind, and I know what I want a little bit better than I did 26 years ago. And when I get hyper focused on that, that's when my mind closes down and I'm not able to see God's will, right? And one of the themes of my two-way prayer is that God's will is in the present moment. He is the moment, he is the future, he is the past, all put together into one. And my job is to just focus on this moment because my human mind could not possibly comprehend God's will, past, present, and future. It's too much. I'm human. My mind can understand the next right thing. Like 5 minutes is a big amount of time. Like right now, God's will. And to know whatever plans I do make are totally in the hands of the God of my understanding, right? To be able to let go of the expectation that I make a goal and I get a result. I can make a goal and then I invite the loving, caring, greatest power of creation into it for God's will. And then I make that leap of faith that however it turns out, whether I like it or I don't, whether it's comfortable, whether it's not, whether it's painful, whether it's joyous, whatever comes out, like God is still in there. God is still holding it. There's still a lesson to learn. There is still, gratitude to be found.
Love it. Thank you so much, Robin. I so appreciate the way that you laid that out. A couple of times in your talk, you mentioned option C presented itself. I'm assuming that that is something that is deep ingrained within your story and in your life. Tell us a little bit about the concept in your mind of option C, and maybe one more experience if you would like to share where option C presented itself when initially you thought there was no other option.
So a huge part of my story is I can have very black and white thinking. Yes or no, up or down, left or right. There's no gray. It's black, it's white. My thinking boils down and simplifies choices to two, right? Divorce, don't divorce. Get high, kill yourself. Like I remember sharing in a meeting and someone giving me feedback after the meeting and like, you are always sharing about 2 options, Robin. There's more than 2 options. There's a million options, Robin. And for me, that's where like the crack was made and option C was created. And option C can be a gift of my diseased thinking, or option C can be a gift of God of my understanding. And it's so option C is really about like just opening your mind a little bit more, Robin. Just open your mind a little bit. How do you recover? Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Just make a crack in this black and white thinking that you have to see one additional option. And then it broadens to more than one. And sometimes, I'm working with a newcomer, we can brainstorm, 100 different options of things you can do besides use.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Great insights. So, Robin, before we close up, do you have any other words of wisdom that you'd like to share with me and the listening audience?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Awesome. You have shared some experience that I think, well, I know it was helpful for me, and I think there are some who are clinging on by their fingertips that will gain hope from your story. Just one more call, just one more prayer, just one more meeting. What an amazing message. I really, really appreciate it, Robin. All right. So before we close up, I have a real quick closing reading, and then we'll move and we'll do the we version of the Serenity Prayer here in just a minute. But I just want to do this closing reading. It really was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If you have any other questions or would like to reach out to Robin at some point, you can email me at RICO12pod, RECO12pod @gmail.com. And I can relay any questions or anything that you have for Robin to her. Also, you can go to RICO12.com/forum and join in our community and ask questions there, answer others' questions that will come up. I invite the audience to keep coming back. We typically record on Fridays at noon Central Time. And if you haven't yet started getting the emails with the links for those live meetings, go to RICO12.com and jump on that invite list. We'll get it out to you. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Robin, thank you so much for being willing to be voice in that.
Let's take a moment of silence for those who suffer inside and outside these rooms. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that we can, and the wisdom to know the difference just for today.
Amen. Robin, that was so good. So good. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight. Still searching